Yeah. I wanted to mention more about mentor, but I'm gonna move on.
Yeah.
Um, the mechanics, like the mechanics of the practice, right? Like, is there a particular to your comfort level? Is there a particular ritual that you do? Is there a particular state of mind that you have to be in? Do you have to drink a certain kind of tea to sort of prepare yourself? Are you burning incense? Is the hearing or the sensing auditory, or is it sort of like visual? Are you seeing sort of like lights, or are you sensing things and getting a, a an emotional communication, right? It's not necessarily words, but it's like an emotional sense. And so to your comfort levels, like what's the mechanics of your practice?
So I like to call them the clairs, and the clairs are all a little bit of my BFFs. So you have claircognizance, which is clear knowing, clairsentience, which is clear feeling, um, and clairaudience, which is clear hearing. Though all the clairs, I don't even have to go. I think everybody has the basic understanding that you sense it on one of those five sense levels. um, I like to call them like the inner cocoon, and then the outer cocoon is your all knowing. So it's where the silence sits, it's where the dialogue happens, whether you feel it, whether you hear it, whether you see it, whether you know it, um, and whether you intend it. I think intention matters in that exchange of energy as well. um, my intention when I go into any session with anyone is always to first create a sacred space. I do that i- if I've already showered for the day or whatever, if I'm four clients in or whatever. I always wash my hands before and after a session. I always wash my hands before I touch my tools, whether it's my crystals I work with, whether it's a deck I work with. I cleanse that space, and I honor the the sacred energy that these tools help with. So I hold them in a sacred space. I always light a candle. I always have a candle going, whether I'm doing a live, a session, a class. There's all and usually multiple candles around me. And incense and sage are sometimes part of it, pre, but more post a session. I don't wanna hold on to anybody's energy. It's not mine. Like, bye-bye. Have a good day. What and also honoring that, I'm sharing my space because that's a requirement too. If I'm holding and sharing energetic space with somebody, it's a divine transaction that's happening, you know? And I want that person to feel like they can trust me, but I also need to trust them in that space. So, my releasing of it is also a way to honor that trust, that they're gonna go with the information that spirit presented and that I interpreted for them, and they're gonna use it in whatever way they need to. I think a lot of people that do what I do in the early years is you're kinda developing your abilities and your skills. Um, you personalize those little rituals that you do before, during, or after a session. But also holding on to, I think in the early years as you're learning how your gift works and what's the best way, clear audiently, clear feeling, clear seeing, clear knowing, um, what is the best way that works for you? And trusting that that is the way that spirit's communicating with you. That is how they will give you a feeling. They give you a tap in a certain area of the body. I have colleagues that are completely clairsentient, that feel the feelings, and then will also have certain areas of the body spirit will tap or touch or give energy to show them whether it may be an illness present or dis-ease is a better word than illness, dis-ease somewhere in the body. Um, so there's lots of different ways, and everybody's ability is unique to them, but developing the trust to trust that the little rituals and the space you're creating that works because it comes from that place of intention and love within you.
Yeah. I am I'm all about clearing space, energetically or sort of manually. That I do believe that spaces have energy to them. Like, sometimes yeah, I walk into a room, I'm like, oh, the energy is sort of low here,
Mm.
or I'm with somebody and like, oh, this person is really sucking a lot of energy
Mm.
from me. And I like that little practice of yours, sort of like washing hands every time you're done with the session.
Yeah, and I do that, also in my interactions with new people, like, I don't wanna be I'm already, like, extra charged. So, people are drawn to me in certain situations, certain scenarios, certainly not everywhere that I'm not saying it in that way, but people are drawn to me, so their energy is drawn to my energy. I don't I don't need any extra of anything taking up my space, whether it be mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically. No. And I agree with you that everything has a spirit. There is a spirit of place, there is a spirit of time, there is a spirit of us. Everything has an energy and a vibration. And a lot of healers, and I would, you are in a healing field. What you do, Eshin, is very important
Yeah,
work.
yeah,
And I think a
yeah.
lot of the things that I do and that you do cross paths, those things intersect. The work is just in a different part of the being, part of the Earth School experience. But they all, I think, are necessary. I think everybody should have therapy at least once in their life, at
Yes.
least once.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. And shop around, folks. Just because you go to one therapist, like Heather was saying earlier,
yes.
it'll be the right fit. But, like at least once,
Yes, at
at
least
least once.
one, yes,
Yeah, yeah.
and
Yeah,
most
yeah,
of
yeah.
them will offer, their time for a kind of pre-info session. So yeah, I do think that therapy is an important tool. I think all of these things, including what I do, are amazing tools, and so the tools you bring into that practice are just as important. They should feel right. I didn't just pick this blue appetite for no reason. It spoke to me in a certain way. Every little thing that I use and hold in my space, I count it as sacred and I treat it as such. And I think we
Yeah.
have to do more of that with a lot of things in our life.
Which is funny that you say, because I in that sort of energetically, I've been to Boston. Energetically, the energy doesn't really fit for me. Like, I've been to Philly. Energetically, that fits more. New York and San Francisco, Seattle. I
Mm,
do also believe, like, land has, and cities, cities on land has sort of like energetic energy. And I think that's one of the reasons why I've lived in Vermont for so long, because energetically, the
yeah,
pace of life
yeah,
really goes with sort of like my energetic flow of, slower and sort of like, transition from one phase to the other. And it's sort of like, like it's very sort of, I could sort of choose to sort of disappear and not socialize with anybody, or I could sort of like, communicate. And, that's when, how you and I met, in the community. I could sort of just put myself out there.
yeah.
And I sort of like that about living in Vermont. I've always liked that about living in Vermont. There's spaces to be in community, and I'm sure everywhere there's spaces to sort of, be, be alone.
I agree with you. Vermont, I call them the greens, in the Misty Mountains here. The Green Mountains and the land and the energy and space held here, it will always feel like you have a root. You're rooted, you're balanced. It has always been a foundational pull, I think, for people of you do feel rooted. You do feel like I'm just me. Like I can
Yeah,
be just me and wear
yeah,
any different hat I want to from one day to the next and still
yeah,
be okay being me,
yeah,
in such a way that it brings a sense of peace that I don't think you do feel in a lot of places because land does hold energy. And I have done plenty of land clearings and cleansings to know that, yeah, things hold energy. And cleansing is an important part of
mhm,
making something connect back to that natural state of itself. whatever it is, a person, place, or thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Speaking of energy, again, to your comfort level, when you are communicating, are you communicating with a specific entity? Are you communicating with a spirit, ancestor? And if you, and again, to your comfort level, like the mechanics of that, and also, do you think all sort of energies or entities should be allowed to communicate? Right? You know, like are there some entities or energies that shouldn't be allowed to communicate, and you know, not not to sort of like, I don't know, be mean or say something inappropriate,
Mhm.
but like energy or spirit like Hitler, like, should an energy like that be allowed to communicate? Again, I hope it's not offensive. I guess
Not at all.
I'm curious, what are your thoughts about, one, what's the energy or spirit that you can communicate with, if there is a specific or a broad, and then two, are there sort of allowances in regards to who gets to communicate on this side of the veil?
So first part, I have a spirit team. Everybody has a spirit team. So a spirit team is made up of angels, guides, or masters or teachers. You know, everybody kind of in my field has a different reference point and how they label that. We also have on our spirit team loved ones that have crossed over or loved ones we've had previous lives with. And those energies come in and out of our life at different times. And then we have some that stay, you know, usually in my experience, I have about 4 to 6 that I work with for different things, whether it's in a session with a client or in my daily life. So I work with different ones for different things. They all have their own personality. I have a very different dialogue with each one of them. Some of them show me information through images, some of them share information through words or phrases. Some do both. Some give me a feeling or a sense, or when just simply when their presence is there, I know it means a certain thing. Um, the cultivating of the trust, you know, that you do with your spirit team is really important, and trust that, so it's quieting the voice, the inner critic, quieting that inner critic, which is just the thinking mind. And it really is built ego, it's built on habit. It just knows habit. This is where like you know, neuroscience comes in and how regulating our nervous system, and a lot of you're seeing a lot of that stuff all over social media now and on the internet of it, those are important pieces of getting the inner voice quiet so that the real inner voice, which is our intuition, can then speak and trust. So not letting the inner critic say, oh, well, that's crazy, why did I just see a red flyer wagon? That's random, this has no meaning for this person. And I've learned, and spirit has shown me so many times in my work how every time I doubt and then I just am pushed. I have this one guy that like literally feels like they push it out of my mouth because it's going to shift the energy in the reading. And yes, it is valid. And you know, you share, does this mean anything for you in regards to da da da, whatever we're talking about or whatever is going on in their session? Absolutely, it does. And that level of trust and vulnerability to trust, because I think we're in a vulnerable space when we trust. And I think for a lot of people, the scariest place to trust is themselves because we've been conditioned to trust everything out here, you know, as living proof, or you have to see it. You have to, like, it has to be a tangible thing. And that kind of into that second part of your question. So, you know, let's just say in reference to the practice of Wicca, you know, there are many gods and goddesses and archetypes and Maiden Mother Crone, and it's a very individual journey and process to choose which ones speak to you. I also see them as archetypes, and those archetypes are really important. You don't have to be engaged in spirituality or spiritual or a denominated religion, you know. anything that says, "I believe in this entity or this spirit or this archetype or this goddess," and it's the be all and end all. If that works for you, go with it. Like, fly that flag, honey. I'm all about it. If it speaks to you and it leads you to a place of trusting yourself and your voice, and, you are communicating with, let's just say Goddess Bridget, because the beauty of her we've just experienced, at the beginning, that first in bulk fire of coming into spring. Like, we have reached a place of returning to the light that is beautiful, and like we're almost through winter. Those archetypes, those connections to what you want to communicate with, will often present themselves, or you create an active connection to, and you don't have to necessarily worship. You don't have to do any of that. You just create the space to open up the energy. I do, in a lot of my work, I work with Archangel Raphael, Archangel Gabriel, Archangel Michael. Those are, like, primary archangels that I work with in my work, but I have other guides that, from funny to serious to, they bring it all. And it has been years of work of cultivating. And I feel like as a teacher now and as a mentor now, I am at that place where I had to live and learn, and I can eliminate some of that chatter, and help people do that for themselves to cultivate it sooner. It doesn't have to take years. It doesn't have to take months. Connection is instant. If that's what you intend, it's instant. Um, I think that those that have walked Earth school prior that people maybe want to communicate with, whether it's Elvis, Hitler, Gandhi, and that's a wide range in there. Um, I think souls are reborn. I think there's pieces of spirit and soul everywhere. So can you communicate with that specific spirit's energy? Yeah. Um, One thing to be, like, really mindful of is that who you talk to and the energy you're trying to connect to, um, whether it's for dialogue, it should always be with the intention of gaining knowledge or bringing light to something. If you wanna do it on what feels like a darker side, if that's where your flag flies, go for it. But it's not gonna create, what, I'm here to create. So I have my own little space over here where I'm creating. Everybody has free will in that way. And let's just, honestly, what I've learned, we've all been a villain in one lifetime or another. In order to understand and have our evolution of unconditional love, which is what we come from and what we go back to, have a full deep depth of understanding of that, we're here to cultivate compassion. Part of compassion is understanding that there is a lot of things that happen that are dark, and there are a lot of people that seem like they are just dark, but they are also light. We are made up of all the same dark and light matter. So, and I won't go too far down that rabbit hole, but it,
Well, yeah, I think it goes back to what you were saying, in the sense of like intention, right? Like the intention plays a key role
yeah,
in how you're calling the energy into the room, or into your presence.
yes,
And so if you're in this sort of dark mindset, you're going to probably, draw in, some of the more, darker elements of nature, right?
yes,
In the sense of
yes.
of, of, of not necessarily um being evil,
Mhm.
because again, I think good those words, good and evil, I think it's a really sort of
Yep,
Christian terms,
yep.
um in the sense of what you can do and what you can't do. And I also think, or at least I'm hearing you say, it's like, this practice could be whatever feels right to you, right? Like if the medium is water, then that's the medium that you're using. if one of the senses is more sort of auditory, right? Like, that then you'll sort of cultivate that. And so it really becomes your own thing. But again, like the intention is what really matters is that if you're calling energy that sort of Hitler like, then that's on the person, right? Like
Yeah,
that's
you have to trust in both your ability to be accountable, not that everybody does, but you're going to be accountable for your choices and your intention on whatever side or whatever energy and intention you're putting that out for.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Well, I
you
guess,
know,
part of my second question was just trying to figure out, like, can some energy be more aggressive when it's coming towards you? Can I'm thinking like if there are individuals out there who either intentionally or unintentionally are emotional vampires, right? Like they sort of like suck that out of you, and to a certain degree they sort of seek you out. I guess I was just curious if that is also on that plane, right? Like, can energy sort of like, oh, this is a new practitioner. They're a baby, and I'm gonna sort of like, and maybe just my way of phrasing that question is a very probably a very Christian,
I don't think so at
Christian.
all. I no.
Yeah.
What To answer your question, yes. So, it definitely can feel as intense as you believe that it is. It can definitely have and carry and bring that level of energy, whether it be in an energy of hate or darkness or an energy of love and light. Earth school is made of dual T's for a reason. It pushes and helps us expand on any side of the spectrum. Um, and how deep do you want to go? How much do you want to grow? How wide and big are you here to evolve? And when you are starting out and kind of connecting to your gifts, you are more vulnerable to people that function and live in the intention of getting their batteries recharged by sucking other people's energy, or getting their needs met through taking from others. And it's all intention. We are way smarter as a species, us Homo sapiens, than we give ourselves credit for, or others think they're fooling us to believe. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. So after doing this work for how many years, like what's sort of like um the biggest message that you've sort of gotten, either from the other side or either from energy or from spirit? What's sort of a lesson, that really sort of, I don't know, took your breath away to a certain degree?
One of the biggest ones is the level of love that truly exists within each of us and that we come from. It is just the a pure love. So people that have like near death experiences will come back and talk about the intensity of the love, and how when they've crossed into that other energy realm, they don't want to come back because they feel that like they've released the physical body. You know, but spirit says, no, your work isn't done. Let's come back. And they often, there is not one story that I've heard of an NDE that it does not include the level of love and capacity. And I can tell you through my work, I have seen it a gazillion times over in the level of love that exists. Another like kind of big spiritual truth that I'm always reminded of and humbled by, is that it it's divine timing. Trusting the process is part of the learning. The in between time of from, we have a goal or there's something that we really, really want and we're working towards it and we're doing all the work, and we're not seeing it, come to fruition yet. Trust that spirit has heard you, that your guides and guardians are working, the universe is conspiring with you to make it happen. That's why the universe exists. It's why we exist, to experience, to create. So to see the limitlessness That's, like kind of the foundational piece of that message of everything in divine timing. There's so many other exciting things that we're missing if we're just focused on it's not happening yet. It's not happening yet. There's other things we're supposed to be experiencing in that in between time. So, yeah, just trust the process. Trust that spirit has heard you. Trust that they have your back because they do.
So when we started, you mentioned that you sort of combine science with spirituality, and I'm curious why, because I don't think a lot of people would sort of put the two together, because I think a lot of people assume that they're sort of like polar opposites from each other. Like what was that sort of insight that says, huh, I think there's a connection here? Yeah, because you mentioned, quantum physics, I believe, and so I'm curious, like, what was that feeling or that place that said, "Yeah, these two do go together?"
Young. I was young actually, and I remember, I think it was, like 7th grade earth science and dissecting a frog. And I remember feeling this, like, almost tiny little electric shock kind of run through the tip of the scalpel into the tip of my finger. And, at that time, it was, school was different then, when I grew up. It was like things were very different, I think, than school is today, as far as classrooms and how they're run and the flow of it and those different types of things. But um, I remember coming in that day with so much anxiety about having to dissect a frog, as I'm sure so many people can relate to. But it felt to me like there was something more in the experience of this, and something kept nudging me to move past my fear and do it and move, because I was literally gonna, like, fake being sick to go to the nurse to get out of doing it. But I also had a lab partner, so I had, like, it was part of your grade. You had to dissect that frog among, I don't know, a cow eyeball, and there was another thing, but for your grasshopper, we started with grasshoppers. And I was gonna fake sick that day, and I said, "I don't wanna do this," but something kept pushing me to do it, and I remember picking up that scalpel, and I felt this electric shock, very light in this finger, and what was that? There was no static or anything like that. But I knew it was something different, something spiritual, because I had that knowing from an early age of there was a shift in consciousness for me in that moment. So it's almost like you're still in your body, but your awareness shifts up. Like, say when you have a few cocktails and you've had one too many, and it kind of hits you and you go, whoa, that is also a shift in consciousness. So it's just a different place and level of consciousness that I was shifted into. And I looked around the lab. Mr. Toomey was my teacher. Shout out to you, Mr. Toomey. You are still on this beautiful planet. Um, and all these images of just the dissecting, like, posters and like the parts and the nerves and this organ for this animal sits here and da da da. And I saw it as like this energetic network. I felt like this looks like the veins, like you can look at your inner wrist and there's the veins there and how it connects. And I'm like, there's something more here. I remember feeling that. And I was automatically doing the dissection as I'm processing all this at the same time. And I remember being done. It was almost like I came back into my body, but I came back into alignment with that level of consciousness that I was supposed to be functioning in at the moment. And it was this intermingling of the energies. And I knew in that moment there was a way deeper connection than I had ever been led to believe, because, up until maybe around that time, there was still connection to the Catholic Church or organized religion in some way. So I remember very clear about that message of the difference and separation of science and spirituality. Like, they are very different sides of the spectrum from one another. They are opposites, but they're not, and they weren't. So in that experience right there was a definitive knowing Even in that gap time I talked about earlier where I had to, like, wait it out in my life experience to, like, start getting validation about all these things that I felt and knew naturally. That experience changed how I processed information going forward from there. I could see the interconnectedness in everything. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, I promise there won't be a test.
No dissecting.
No. Well, Heather, thank you so much for spending time with me and sort of sharing your experience and your insight and the lessons you've learned and the growth that you've done. And that's one of the reasons why I love doing this is
Mm.
connecting with people who are again doing the work and so where can people find you and like what's the next project or class that you're teaching and I'll definitely have all that information down
Yeah.
in the description where folks could sort of like get a hold of you. So what's on the docket for you right now?
So again, thank you for having me. I've loved, sharing this time in this space with you to just share some of those things. Guidedhearthealing.com is my website. It's being updated, but it's the basic one is there. But I'm doing some work in the background to get an active class schedule on there. Um, because now it's just when people reach out and they're like, "When is your next class?" or "Let me know." So I'm trying to eliminate and simplify that process for myself. But I'm currently in 3 more weeks with the current round of classes I'm doing. I'll have another round of classes starting at the end of April. And those will be shorter. Those are 4 to 6 week classes, depending on the class. And I literally this year have been keeping it at basics. So developing your psychic ability, connecting with that intuitive voice. I have a whole class that I do on animal messengers and animal guides and like our animal familiars. And the topics range and that's what I love about what I do because there's something for everybody in my work. So I should have that info on my website about upcoming classes for that April round within the next 3-ish weeks. But Guided Heart Healing, you can just check it out to, see what I do. You can always reach out to me on Instagram, Guided Heart Healing. Um, yeah, and I'm just looking forward to how things just continue to unfold out here and to meet people's needs as things develop because we are living in interesting times to say the least. So I see people's needs collectively change every couple of years. So, and I'm always open to, I do one-on-one. One-on-one is a bit more intensive, but I can always send people info about that. And that lasts truly anywhere from 6 to 18 months. It just depends on what you want to explore and kind of what the end game is for you. So I'm always open to talking to people kind of initially about any of my classes, any of my sessions. And if you want one, just check out my website or reach out by email.
Nice. You've heard it here, folks. And so I'm going to have all that information down below in the description. If you're feeling the energy coming from Heather over the screen to you, please listen to it and have it pull you in and reach out to her. And if you haven't hit a thumbs up, please hit a thumbs up because again, that really helps the algorithm. And I will see you folks next time. Thanks, Heather.
Thank you, Eshin.